Zola Washington stood on the platform, her heart pounding like a drum. The Hogwarts Express wasn't just a train, it was a promise of a world she never knew existed until a letter arrived, addressed to her in green ink. Back in her London neighborhood, magic was something you saw in movies, not something that lived inside you. Her parents, both Muggles, had been shocked, but they were also proud. They hugged her tight, telling her to be brave, to be herself. Zola looked at the massive scarlet engine, steam puffing into the cool morning air. This was real. She clutched her new wand made of ebony wood, feeling its warmth seep into her palm. It felt like holding hands with destiny itself. Hogwarts was more than a castle. It was a universe of stone and starlight. As Zola floated across the Black Lake in a small boat, she stared up at the towering spires. They seemed to scratch the night sky. The Great Hall was even more incredible. Thousands of candles floated above 4 long tables, each filled with students staring at the new first years. Zola felt so small, so out of place. She saw portraits on the walls, and the people in them were moving, whispering. She saw ghosts gliding through the walls, shimmering and pale. Everything was a shock to her system. A beautiful, terrifying, wonderful shock. She tightened the grip on her robes, trying to breathe. She walked with the other first years toward the front of the hall. A worn, pointed hat sat on a stool. The Sorting Hat. Professor Longbottom, the headmaster, called out names. Each student went up, sat down, and the hat shouted a house. Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Slytherin. Zola's palms grew sweaty. Where would she fit in? She saw so few faces that looked like hers. A knot of worry tightened in her stomach. What if none of these ancient houses wanted a girl like her? A girl from a world without magic. A girl whose ancestors weren't listed in the grand history books of wizardry. She was an outsider, and every stone in the castle seemed to know it. Her name was called Washington Zola. The hall went quiet, or maybe it just felt that way. She walked up to the stool, her legs feeling like jelly. The hat was placed on her head, covering her eyes. A voice echoed in her mind, not outside. A sharp mind, it whispered. And a brave heart. You have a fire inside you, a need to protect others. You see injustice and want to make it right. There is loyalty here, but also a fierce independence. It must be Gryffindor. The Gryffindor table erupted in cheers. Zola smiled, a real, genuine smile. Maybe, just maybe, she had found a place to belong after all. Finding her seat at the roaring Gryffindor table was a blur of handshakes and welcoming smiles. She sat next to a boy with bright red hair and a constellation of freckles. He introduced himself as Leo Weasley. He had an easy laugh and a kind face. He pointed out his cousins at the other tables, a sprawling family tree that seemed to be a part of Hogwarts itself. Across from her sat a quiet girl named Ilara Vance. Ilara had dark, serious eyes and was already reading a thick book on magical theory. She didn't say much, but her small smiles made Zola feel seen. These were her first friends in this strange new world, a Weasley and a Ravenclaw at heart. The days that followed were a whirlwind of classes and discovery. Charms class was her favorite. The feeling of making a feather float with just a word, Wingardium Leviosa, was pure joy. Potions, however, was a different story. The classroom was in the dungeons, cold and damp. The instructions were complicated, and her cauldron bubbled with a sickly green color instead of the bright blue it was supposed to be. Some students from Slytherin snickered. One of them, a boy named Cassian Malfoy, made a comment about Muggleborns not having the finesse for potion making. Zola's jaw tightened. She wasn't going to let him get to her. She would just have to work twice as hard. One evening, while exploring the castle with Leo and Ilara, they found a hidden corridor behind a tapestry of dancing trolls. The air was cold, and a strange sound echoed from the darkness. It was a whisper, a faint, sad sound that seemed to call out a name. It was a name Zola had never heard before. Leo, ever the adventurer, wanted to follow it immediately. Ilara, always cautious, pulled out a book trying to find a magical explanation for whispering walls. Zola felt a pull toward the sound. It felt familiar, like a forgotten song from a dream. It was a mystery, their very own Hogwarts mystery. That night, Zola couldn't sleep. The Slytherin's words still stung. The whisper in the corridor still echoed in her mind. She felt like an imposter. The castle was ancient, filled with pure blood legacies and centuries of tradition. She was new. She was different. She looked out the window of the Gryffindor Tower, watching the giant squid swim in the black lake under the moonlight. She wasn't a Weasley or a Malfoy. She was a Washington. And maybe that was enough. She had friends. She had a mystery to solve. She wouldn't let anyone make her feel like she didn't belong. She would make her own legacy one spell at a time. The whispers grew louder over the next few weeks, but only Zola seemed to hear them clearly. It was a girl's voice, tinged with a deep sadness. It spoke of a lost diary and a forgotten promise. Leo and Alara believed her, even if they couldn't hear it as she did. Together they spent their free time in the library, searching for clues. Alara, with her incredible research skills, dug through old school records and forgotten Hogwarts histories. She discovered the story of Thea Knight, a Muggle-born student from the 1920s, who was a brilliant witch but disappeared from the school records after her 5th year. There was no explanation, just a blank space where her story should have been. Their investigation led them to face new challenges. One night, following the whispers, they found themselves in a restricted section of the library. The air was thick with the smell of old parchment and dark magic. As Zola reached for a dusty tome that seemed to hum with energy, the books on the shelves started flying around them. They swirled like a flock of angry paper birds. Leo, quick with his wand, cast a shield charm, protecting them from the onslaught. Zola, remembering a spell from charms, shouted, "Immobulus!" The books froze in mid-air, dropping to the floor with a series of soft thuds. It was a close call, a reminder that the castle's secrets were well guarded. Cassian Malfoy and his friends continued to be a problem. They saw Zola's quest as a foolish game. Chasing ghosts, Cassian would sneer in the corridors. Muggleborns are always so dramatic. His prejudice was a constant low-level hum of negativity. It wasn't just about her blood status, it was about her being different, an outsider trying to uncover a history that some preferred to keep buried. But Zola found strength in her friends. Leo would always have a joke to lighten the mood, and Alara would counter their ignorance with a sharp, well-researched fact. Their friendship was her shield, stronger than any spell. The whispers eventually led them to a loose stone in the wall of the same corridor where it all began. Zola felt a strange connection to the spot, a feeling of rightness. Working together, they managed to pry the stone loose. Inside was a small hidden compartment. Nestled within was a thin, leather-bound diary. It was Thea Knight's. As Zola opened it, the whispers in her mind stopped. They were replaced by Thea's voice, clear as day, rising from the pages. The diary told a story of a brilliant student who was bullied for her background and ultimately forced to leave Hogwarts, her magical achievements erased from history by a prejudiced headmaster. Thea's diary was a revelation. It wasn't just a story of sadness, it was a testament to her brilliance. She had invented several new charms and discovered a way to communicate with the castle itself, which was how her voice had echoed through the walls for a century. Zola, Leo and Alara knew they couldn't keep this to themselves. This was bigger than a school mystery. It was about justice. They took the diary to Headmaster Longbottom. He listened patiently, his face growing more serious with every word they read. He remembered vague stories of a lost student from his own time at Hogwarts, but the truth was far worse than the rumors. Armed with the truth, Headmaster Longbottom called an assembly in the Great Hall. He told the entire school the story of Thea Knight. He read passages from her diary, showcasing her incredible talent and the injustice she faced. He spoke of how prejudice had robbed the wizarding world of a great mind. Zola stood with him, the diary in her hands. She felt the eyes of every student on her, including Cassian Malfoy, whose usual sneer was gone, replaced by a look of stunned silence. Zola spoke, her voice clear and strong. She said that Hogwarts belonged to everyone with magic in their hearts, no matter where they came from. The impact was immediate. Thea Knight's name was restored. A new portrait was commissioned to hang in the Great Hall, showing a smiling girl with clever eyes. Headmaster Longbottom announced the creation of the Thea Knight Award for Magical Innovation, to be given to a student who showed exceptional creativity, regardless of their background. The whispers in the castle were gone, replaced by a new feeling of warmth and inclusion. Students started talking more, sharing stories about their own diverse backgrounds. Zola had not just solved a mystery, she had helped heal a part of the school's soul. As the school year drew to a close, Zola looked out at the grounds from the Gryffindor common room. The castle felt different now. It felt more like home than ever before. She had faced down bullies, solved an ancient mystery, and made friends who were like family. She had found her voice and used it to make a real change. The future was a blank page, an adventure waiting to be written. Zola Washington, the girl with the braids and the ebony wand, was ready. This was her world now, and it was a world full of hope, magic, and new beginnings.